Powered by Riverside FM. Powered by Riverside.
Islam, and welcome to the Moorish Light Continues, where the revolution is a podcast. Um, we begin by giving praises to the Almighty God, Allah, the causeless cause and the rootless root from which all things have come. We give honor to the last prophet in this dispensation, Prophet Noble Drew Ali in the first, second, and third form. I give honor to Grand Sheikh John Givenzeal, who built upon the foundation. I'd like to give a special honor to my teacher, Grand Sheikh Richardson Dingle Eel, Prophet Noble Drew Ali III, who was with the founder, the reincarnated prophet, and lived a life to be able to teach and educate myself, as well as he brought his brother, Grand Sheikh Timothy Dingle Eel, hyphen Prophet Noble Drew Ali, modern day Moses and Aaron. And of course, you need to understand the lessons of Moses and Aaron. Um, Honors to Marcus Messiah Garvey and the great emancipator Abraham Lincoln. Honors to Supreme Grand Sheikh and Sheikess Prather Eel, Supreme Grand Sheikess Louise Dingle Eel, the noblest. Honorary Supreme Grand Sheikh Thornhill and his wife Sheikess Thornhill, our current Grand Sheikess, as well as National Grand Sheikess Tiffany Jones Bay. Islam, and welcome to the Moorish Light, the Soul School. Shining light, clearing up the confusion, and teaching the basic facts. Our objective is unity and manifesting the ultimate goal of the Moorish movement. We are not here to dispute charters, who is the Supreme Grand Sheikh. We are here to establish a basic foundation of the Moorish movement in love and understanding. Um, so before I define light, let me also say the prayer. And I was so happy with my effects, but I find out today I guess I need to get a new computer, and because obviously my computer cannot hold for some reason uh, my background that I like. Okay, so Islam. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Now let's define light. Spiritually, light symbolizes truth, divine presence, hope, guidance, and purity, representing awareness and the pathway from spiritual darkness, in parenthesis, ignorance and sin, towards enlightenment, goodness, and union with the divine, appearing across all cultures as God's creation, inner wisdom, or guiding force for humanity. It signifies wisdom, life, revelation, and the illumination of the Spirit within. So, of course, we're going to open as we always do, reading from the Holy Quran of Mecca. So, of course, you know what I'm getting ready to do. I'm going to share the screen. And this is Surah 3, Ayat 106. I just thought it would be appropriate for the time that it is now. It says, on the day when some faces will be lit up with white, some faces will be in the gloom of black. To those whose faces will be black will be said, did ye reject faith after accepting it? Taste then a penalty for rejecting faith. And the footnote says, the face expresses our personality, our inmost being. White is the color of light. And I just read you the definition of light. To become white is to be illumined with light. Anybody ever heard the saying, the truth is the light and the light must shine? Which stands for the felicity, the rays of the glorious light of Allah. Black is the color of darkness, sin, rebellion, misery, and removal from the grace and light of Allah. These are the signs of heaven and hell, the standard of decision in all questions is the justice of Allah. But those whose faces will be lit with white, they will be in the light of Allah's mercy, therein to dwell forever. These are the signs of Allah. We rehearse them to thee in truth, and Allah means no injustice to any of his creatures. To Allah belongs all that is in the heavens and on the earth. To him all questions go back for decision. So it's kind of hard to understand when we do our proper research. And I'm talking for those of us who say we have more understanding, how we can claim black in any form. And that does not just mean black in the sense of color, but black in the sense of an identity, black in the sense of the shade of your skin. Black in any sense does not truly apply, should not truly apply to man. So I want to stop sharing this and get into our topic today. Give me 1 second. You know what the problem might be? I have so many windows open because, let me go back. So, my topic today is Act 6, how to take action. So one of the ways we can deal with this, and one of the lessons I will be teaching is what is the divine constitution and bylaws, because I think sometimes we just don't know, and it's okay not to know, because I'm still learning. I've been here for a number of years, and people look at me like, you're still learning. So let's go to the definition of an act. Let's see. And I need to share my screen. Let me go here. I need to stop first. And then we're going to go and we're going to share the screen. And let's see. And I did ask the question, because, a lot of times, a lot of us go to AI and we just ask random things, and AI will give you a random answer. So the question I ask is, what does an act and constitution and bylaws mean? It says an act in the context of a constitution and bylaws generally refers to a formal binding decision, statute, or rule passed by an organization's governing body. While a constitution outlines the fundamental high level principles, an act or provision within the bylaws serves as a specific, enforceable regulation that dictates operational procedures. Let me read that again because that did something for my soul. An act is a and the act in the context of a constitution and bylaws generally refers to a formal binding decision, statute, or rule passed by an organization's governing body. While a constitution outlines the fundamental high level principles, an act or provision within the bylaws serves as a specific, enforceable regulation that dictates operational procedures. So when we see Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, Act 6, Act 7, we have to also understand they require action. I'm just going to scroll and show just a little bit more. It says hierarchy. An act is a subsidiary to the Constitution, meaning it cannot contradict the high level ground law of the organization. Definition: it is a recorded instrument that holds binding legal and procedural force. Because I want you to understand, when you look at the Moorish Science Temple, the Divine Constitution and Bylaws is not just something to read. It is a guide on how to act and live within the Moorish movement, as well, and in some instances in your life. It says purpose and bylaws. Acts are often found within bylaws to define specific actionable rules regarding membership, meetings, and officers' responsibilities. Legislative action. Just as an act of Congress becomes law, an act within an organization is an adopted regulation that dictates how business is conducted. Now, when you come into the Moorish Science Temple, you don't come in under Act 1, you come in under Act 7. And let me read the summary. In summary, an act represents the formal adoption of a specific rule, while the bylaws are the collection of those acts regulating the organization's internal affairs. So, when one becomes a member of the Moorish Science Temple, one must come through Act 7. Now, Act 7 tells you the actions you must take as a member to become entitled to faithful. So when you look at the Divine Constitution and Bylaws, as a member, you should start from 7, and then we're going to move to Act 6. Act 6 is the educational, instructional, historical, constitutional, and historical, constitutional, divine, moral. Act 6 covers every discipline in Moorish science, because a lot of us look at Moorish science in a very general way. Moorish science was never meant to be taught broadly. It was meant to be taught so that action can be taken. So before I go into the lesson of Act 6, I think I need to read Act 6. And I'm I don't know how many other Moors are, but I am upset at how many people are claiming our divine constitution and bylaws as if they belong to them. Moors, we got to get together and get this stuff straight. You talk about adding confusion or fuel to the fire. Come on now. So Act 6 says, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed. And I always use the term must, that they must know, because I don't know how you may know, but for some reason somebody put a may in. That they must know that they are part and parcel of this said government. Listen to what you need to know as a Moorish American. That they may know or must know that they are one, a part and parcel of this said government. How do you know that? Two, no, they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and last until 1865. So now you got to go through the history between 1779 and 1865. When you relate this to chapter 47, you would start from 1774 to 1865. And it says during the time of slavery. So that meant that if it was during the time of slavery, at some point in time, slavery should have ended. Then it goes on to say, but this is a new era of time now. And all men, not some men, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabit the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. So as we go, we're going to go into this act and we're going to kind of break it down. So it's very relevant. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I just realized something here. Let me stop. I don't know if y'all didn't even see Act 6, so I'll just stop sharing this and go back. And read Act 6. Now, I'm taking this from another website who is claiming our lessons. And I want to know why we in here bickering and everybody's stealing our stuff, but we kind of like in here fighting with this infight and complain about why we haven't done what we need to do. What protection have we put on what the prophet has left us? Let's think about that for a moment. So, Act 6, for those who may not be familiar with it, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed. That they must know that they are part and parcel of the government. So one of the things you need to understand is what is part and part. What does it mean by part and parcel of this said government? And some people will say part and parcel. Both of them are very applicable when you understand the history. It says, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians. Something you are not, because these names were given to slaveholders, given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and last until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. Not some men, but all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. So, we're going to break this down. So we've already talked about what is an act and what does it mean. It's the legal, it's the required actions of any member. Required. Now you don't have a choice. It is required. So, as I said, Act 7 tells us what we should do, but Act 6 is education. So, we're going to talk about that. Let's see. The first action in the Moorish Science Temple is not some members, but all members must proclaim their nationality. And then there's an "and" right here. And when you see "and," that means another action is taking place. All members must proclaim. So that means whatever your foreparents' nationality is, that's what you should be proclaiming when you join the Moorish Science Temple, because everybody is not a Moorish American. How do we know that? Because we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed. That they must know that they are, one, a part and parcel of the said government, and we're going to talk about that as well, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians. So let's go there first. So I'm going to have to stop sharing this screen, and then I'm going to have to share another screen with you. Let's see, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? So we're going to talk about some terms. So the terminology, make sure I had the right one. All right, it says racial classification for African Americans in the U.S. Census has changed approximately 9 times since 1790. The revisions often reflect evolving social views, pseudoscience, and political shifts. Doesn't say anything about land, doesn't say anything about your identity. So let's walk through this for a little bit. Evolution of racial categories. Terminology and methodology for counting the, and I'm going to use so-called black population, have shifted significantly. 1790 to 1810 included as slaves and all other free persons. 1820 to 1840, a new category for free colored persons was added to distinguish free so-called black individuals from those who were enslaved. 1850, the census introduced the term black and mulatto to measure perceived blood quantums for both free and enslaved people. 1870, for the first time after the Civil War, formerly enslaved individuals were included by name rather than just as a count. Now, ask yourself, whose name were they carrying? Just a question. 1890, categories expanded to include quadroon, which is 1/4 African ancestry, octoroon, 1/8 African ancestry, reflecting an obsession with racial purity. 1900 to 1920, the quadroon and the octoroon categories were dropped, and the term Negro was introduced as a formal designation. 1930, the term mulatto was permanently removed to the adoption for one drop rule, which classified anybody with African ancestry as black if you had one drop of our blood. I don't know how they measured that, but if they looked at they would look at your records. And there was this case, and I can't remember the name of the case, but if you like to check that out, there's a case you can research that dealt with that because somebody wanted to be classified, I think, as white, and they said they had one drop of our blood. 1930, the term mulatto was permanently removed due to the adoption of the one drop rule, which classified anybody with African ancestry as black. 1970 to 1990, the term black, listen to this, reappeared on forms often listed as Negro or black. So help me understand. If it reappeared, that means it was already there. So when James Brown said, "Say it loud and I'm black and I'm proud," he wasn't saying something new. He was taking you back in time. And even to this hour, we perceive black to mean something more than what it actually is. Now, either we're going to have to start doing some reading, some researching, and we're going to have to get into a national mindset so that we can have a national agenda for our people. Because right now, even with more science, we got people creating all these different agendas. There's only one agenda that we all should be following. But let me finish this out. It says 2000 to present, respondents could select more than one race for the first time, and the category was updated to Black, African American, or Negro. In 2024, the U.S. Census updated the federal standards to remove the term Negro from the definition. Listen to this now. Remove the term Negro from the definition of Black or African American, citing as it is as outdated and offensive. Additionally, the Bureau now uses a combined race and ethnicity question to better capture multiracial identities. We a race, not a nation, but a race. How did we get here? So let's stop sharing this. And so we've talked about race and so now we also have to deal with the fact that I lost my thought there. We also have to deal with the fact that these terms. So one of the other things I want to do for you, and somebody asked me why not do a PowerPoint. I don't. Let me be my nice self. So I'm trying not to get too far from my script. So, because I can get caught up. So we've talked about Negro, Black, and colored, and so the prophet teaches we're part and partial of this said government. This is Paul of Acts 6. And so in order to deal with that appropriately, we have to go once again back into a document. Notice that I deal with documents. I don't want you to believe nothing I got to say. Give me a second here. Now, this is the dissenting opinion from the Dred Scott decision, and it is from Chief Justice Curtis. And it says that the government was simply a confederacy of several states possessing a few divine powers over subjects of general concern. Each state retaining every power, jurisdiction, and right not expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. No power was thus delegated to the government of the Confederation to act on any question of citizenship or to make rules in any respect thereto. The whole matter was left to stand upon the action of the several states, and to the natural consequence of such action. That citizen in each state should be citizens of the Confederacy and to which that state had entered, style whereof the United States of America. To determine whether any free persons descended from Africans held in slavery were citizens of the United States under Confederation, and consequently at the time of the adoption of the Constitution of the United States, it is only necessary to know whether any such persons are citizens either of the states under Confederation at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. Of this there is no doubt. At the time of the ratification of the Articles of Confederation, all free native born inhabitants of the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and North Carolina, though descended from African slaves, were not only citizens of the states, but such of them as had the other necessary qualifications possessed a franchise of electors on equal terms with other citizens. So when you look back at your history, and you often hear us talk about 35 Moors and 20 Anglo-Saxons, you should also understand that we were an integral part of setting up the Union. So, as we move forward, we're going to look at some things. So, one of the things I just wanted to make clear, because a lot of us are under the assumption that the colonists brought slavery here. But in actuality, guess what? England brought slavery here, and they had to deal with it. It was already an existing fact. And us being who we are, what we did for them, we helped them establish the Union. We helped them move from a monarchy state of mind to a democratic state of mind. And a lot of this is based on Hebrew law. But back to Acts 6. Now the prophet says in chapter 45, it's 48, I'm sorry. Come all ye Asiatics of America and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights. You are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed. So, key word here is birthrights. We are the only people on the face of earth who has no birthrights. And with the advent of Christianity becoming a global system, it has people denying their forefathers. The prophet teaches every man must worship under his own vine and fig tree, and every man must worship under his own vine and fig tree. I was getting ready to add something that doesn't belong there. So, in essence, they are nullifying your connection to Hebrew law, your connection to your forefathers, and they have us imitating them. So when we think about equality or equity, we look at it on a social level. But slavery was not a social issue. Slavery was a system that had to be legally destroyed or legally terminated. Since that legality never happened, we ended up taking those habits, those residual habits. We still function from the residual habits of the plantation. And it has absolutely nothing to do with how well you are trained or, as you might say, educated. It does have something to do with how you live morally, how you treat family, the constant bickering, the women versus men, children versus parents. All of that is all plantation conduct. Because as long as we're bickering, they're growing. As long as you're distracted. So one of the things that I think that will help us to understand what I'm talking about is I'm going to go to another document. And so, I have a way. I've always tell you have to ask certain questions to get what you want. Overcoming the trauma of slavery, often referred to in literature as post-traumatic slave syndrome, involves a multifaceted approach addressing psychological, communal, and historical wounds. Key steps identified in academic and therapeutic literature focus on acknowledging the trauma, restoring the cultural pride, and implementing community based healing practices. Now, they say this is based on research related to PTSS, post traumatic syndrome, and historical trauma. Here are the core steps for overcoming this trauma. One, acknowledgement and awareness. So, when we talk about acknowledgement and awareness, would we still be calling ourselves black, Negro, colored, darky, coon, shine? Would we still be carrying the so-called slave master's name? Wouldn't some things would have to change? So let's read a little bit. Recognize the legacy. Acknowledge the trauma of slavery. We haven't acknowledged that trauma because we have engulfed it as a norm. Acknowledge the trauma of slavery. It is not just in the past, but has lasting effects on behavior, family dynamics, and societal structures. One of the things we talk about is a lot of our young women are becoming parents before at a young age. And the thing that upsets me the most, a lot of this is done by older men. Um, a lot of the things we do are habits that we have carried over from not going through a true emancipation process. What was put in place to counteract that trauma of slavery is the Moorish Science Temple Divine and National Movement. But some of us still come with the drama, and we try to we try to dress the trauma up. So let me read a little bit. It says, understand PTSS educates oneself on post traumatic slave syndrome, a concept developed by Dr. Joy DeGruy, which explains the multi generational trauma that stems from centuries of slavery and subsequent systemic racism. Here's one of the lessons. And this lesson is in Acts 6. We have been here over 10,000 years. The original 20 so-called slaves that were brought here was on December the 22nd, 1620, but we have a 1619 project. I haven't done proper research. That's all that is. Um, we carry, we still carry this black and white syndrome, which is basically, and it only happens here in the United States, the black and white syndrome thing, which are still looked upon as if the plantation still exists, which leaves one feeling inferior and one feeling superior. It says open dialogue. Initiate open, honest conversations within families and communities about the historical trauma to break the cycle of silence. One of the things we're going to have to do is let go of black. So when the Moorish Science Temple was founded by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, nobody was addressing the so-called slave issue. But what they were doing was incorporating it in every aspect of life. I don't know if they were doing it consciously or unconsciously. It got to the point until they were so involved in identifying their freedom with their so-called master until they went as far as to practice what they called integration. But integration, again, requires that both parties bring something to the table. We brought nothing. We were just allowed to move in or allowed to pay a visit until they started setting certain standards that wouldn't allow us in certain places. So we still have to have that open dialogue. So when you hear me talk about black, or I make these comments about black, I'm trying to get you out of that post-traumatic slave mindset. It says open dialogue. Initiate open, honest conversations within families and communities about the historical drama to break the cycle of silence. We were taught to hate ourselves. It is more prevalent today than it was when I was growing up. Because now you can go get a bigger butt, bigger boobs. You can have your face fixed. You can just change who you are. You say it's for the better. I say it's because you don't like yourself. And you want to make yourself better than what you are or who you are. Because one of the things you have not done is, and I'm going to 2, cultural reconnection and pride. Reclaim your, and I'm going to say Moorish heritage. Cultivate pride in your Moorish roots and history prior to enslavement to counteract narratives of inferiority. Understand what we have contributed to civilization. Celebrate achievements. Actively learn about and celebrate, I'm going to say Moorish history, culture, and successes to build a positive self-image. Because what we do, we teach you five divine principles: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And then we teach you fundamental principles for our children: obedience to law. Let's see if I can remember. Here I go. Obedience to law, unity, tolerance, respect, and there's one more. But we teach those fundamental principles. Then it says psychological and emotional healing. And it says seek mental health professionals. But we teach you to learn how to love yourself. We teach you to study yourself. And once you understand who you are, it's easy to overcome these things. How many selves are there? Two. Name them: higher self and lower self. So you have to address your you have to address racism. You got to stop looking at the European, because because he said he's white doesn't make him better than you, because in actuality, anybody can be white. White is not exclusive to Europeans. And then it says process grief. Allow space for collective grief, for the collective grieving process to address the intergenerational unresolved wounds of slavery. A lot of us don't know what that is because we're still clinging to the names and principles that delude to slavery. So if you're still clinging to the names and principles that delude to slavery, you can't possibly help yourself get out of it. You need some principles. You need some new principles. You need some new guidelines, or I should say old guidelines. The next part is community building and resilience. Foster trust, engage in activities that build trust within the Moorish community. This is so essential because these little packs of Moors, and I'm over here, and I done this, and I'm over here, and I done that. When in actuality, if we come together as a collective, we can help the nation, we can help the city, we can help the state, we can help the country, and we can help the world. But too many of us sit here with so much doubt because we're trying to measure Moorish science according to the standards of society. Somebody asked me, well, what has Moorish science done? And my response was, what has it done for you? You should be an example of the power of Moorish science. It's not one of the other ways of looking at that. There would be no Father Divine, Daddy Grace, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, a whole bunch of folks would not exist if they had not passed through the doors of the Moorish Science Temple Divine and National Movement. Spirituality and education. With us, we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed. Systemic action. Engage in efforts to combat ongoing racism and systemic inequality. Those terms, Negro, Black, Colored, African, Darky, Coon, Shun, and whatever else you can think of, needs to be taken off the records and put in its proper slavery history. That's where it belongs, in the history of slavery. Next. So then there's no racism to deal with. But as long as you're doing the black and white thing, there's always going to be racism to deal with. Promote equity, support initiatives that focus on economic, educational, and social equity to create a healthier environment for the future. With us, all men now must proclaim their nationality. It says to be recognized by the government in which you live and the nations of the earth. So we will be taking our rightful place among the families of nations. Once we take our rightful place, everything else will fall into its proper balance. So I thought that teaching Act 6 from a different perspective would help us as Moors understand what it is we need to do and what it is we can do. We've got to come together. We've got to get a real Moorish divine and national education so that we can step forward all at the same time. Not doing the crab in the barrel. Oh, she got that. Come here, let me pull. No, we're not going to do that. Not in 2026. We're not going to do that. And I might end up being the most disliked Moorish American on the face of the earth. And now you know what? I will not care if it will get my people out of this mess they are in. I would rather love you in truth than pat you on the head on the mental plantation. So I don't, let me see, was there anything else I needed to share with you? So let's go back. Let's go back to, let me go back here. So, I invite you to join me for my Divine and National Instructions, formerly the History and Law classes. I invite you to join us. That says Sundays from 10:15 between 11:30 and 11:45 because Sunday school is at 12. I also invite you to tune into the More Sense, which comes on Thursdays. Um, that's hosted by Sheik Joyner and Sheik Balance Bay. Um, I also invite you to join us for Sunday School 12 to 2. We're located at 1055 North Milton Avenue. Holy Night 8 to 10. Same hours at 2900 West Preston Street. Send healing prayers out to Sheik Thompson Bay. Um, and I would just like to thank everyone who's listening. Um, we as Moors have to get on the same page. So if you get irritated by me, because I do get, um, I get fussed at and cussed at and a whole bunch of things. But guess what? That's not going to disturb my peace or my mission. I love Moorish science. I love my people. And I'm looking at a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know what nobody else is looking at. I see freedom dawning, actual freedom dawning for us. I see us with the ability to make a change. But I'm not the only one that needs to see it. We all need to see it. We all need to be about it. If you're in the Moorish Science Temple and you're not cracking a book and you're not learning, if all you're holding on to is your Holy Quran, it's a blessing, but it's not the full solution. If all you're holding on is your Moorish literature, it's a blessing, but it's not the whole solution. If all you're holding on to is your Bible, excuse me, it's a blessing, but not a solution, not the solution, not the total solution. All of those things, the Holy Quran of Mecca, if you're holding on to the Holy Quran of Mecca and that's all you're holding on to, that's not the solution. Every record I mentioned should be in your library. That's not including everything you seen me pull up. I have books to support. What I talk about, I have research, and there are books to support what I'm talking about. And every Moorish American should be well rounded and educated in Moorish science, divine and national instructions. Then we can move forward. We can go to Washington, D.C. and say, this is the agenda that our people need to solve the ills and woes that they are suffering today. Yes, we have the solution, but do we have the faith in the solution? I would love to say it's a spiritual problem, but the spirit is perfect because it comes from Allah. It's a lack of acknowledging the spirit. But of course, my time is almost up. And I hope that you have a clearer understanding of Acts 6 and why the prophet says what he says. I hope that remember to follow the Moorish Light on our web page, our YouTube page, The Science of Moorish Science, because that is what I do. I teach science. So, of course, we're getting close to that hour. And I take suggestions because I'm not the most I'm not suave at technology, but I do the best I can. I'm more interested in getting the message out than I am anything else. Um, so, of course, as I said, we've come to the end of our program. I hope you have a clear understanding of what an act is and how lawful it is. That you come into the Moorish Science Temple through Act 7 and Act 6 and work your way backwards, because those two things are going to set your Moorish foundation. If you haven't set your Moorish foundation, you're going to be all over the place. You'll be theocratic, and you'll be this, and you'll be that. You'll be a whole bunch of different things. But when you come through Act 7 and 6, you become eventually a vanguard who will stand in defense of his movement, in defense of the prophet, in defense of the mission, ready to move forward and manifest what it is that we must manifest. So without further ado, I'm going to wish you the rest of the week a prosperous week. Embrace the prophet. Embrace Allah. Embrace divine and national. Embrace one another. And by all means, embrace the mission. There's so much we can do together, and we can do apart. So I thank you. I appreciate you for allowing me to bring to you the Moorish light and love and understanding. So again, peace and love.